Today in Pokemon Emerald, I'm going to be playing Swellow. This is a Pokemon I've been sort of excited to use, not because I think it's going to be a fantastic solo running mon, but more because I think it's really going to struggle. At the end of the game, it has to face Steve and Stone, and normal flying types just don't really have good answers for him. That said, outside of the final battle, I think Swellow has the chance of being at least decent. For base stats, it has 60 HP and defense, 85 attack, 125 speed, so we're moving first against absolutely everything in the game. This is also the reason I went with a Brave Nature to boost my attack and lower my speed. Swellow just doesn't need that amount of speed, it's definitely overkill. Finally, it has 50 special attack and special defense. It's got a medium slow growth rate, which is a huge advantage for it, at least in the early game, but towards the end of the game, this will slow things down, and that's definitely going to make Steve and Stone worse. For an ability, Swellow has Guts, which people always want me to use in these solo challenges, and previously I haven't found it to be that useful. With a Pokemon like Hariyama, for example, when you get poisoned or burned during a fight, the passive damage the status condition does to you every turn is just too much when you have to knock out 4 to 6 enemy Pokemon in a row. And most Pokemon don't get access to healing moves until later into the game when they can use Rest, and it's not the best move to pair with Guts, although Pokemon still have their attack raised by 50% even when they're asleep. It is a non-volatile status condition, but most Pokemon are not going to be attacking while they're asleep. Although I haven't considered using Snore or Sleep Talk in Generation 3, those moves have really only been useful in Generation 2 up until this point. Still though, today with Swellow, I think that Guts is going to be useful, at least for the early game, because I have to find a way to solve Roxanne. My starting moveset is Peck, Growl, Focus Energy, and Quick Attack. Obviously not a good set against Rock-type Pokemon. Through level up, Swellow gets Wing Attack at level 13, which is a really good move. Base 60 power in the early game with the same type attack bonus is going to hit really hard. At level 19, Swellow gets Double Team. This is banned in my playthroughs. And then all the way at 28, it gets Endeavor, which isn't going to be useful for Roxanne, obviously. Beyond that, it gets Aerial Ace and Agility, just so that we can raise our speed more. It would be useful if the Badge Boost glitch worked in this game, or if Agility recalculated your speed in the way that it does in Generation 1, countering out the Paralysis debuff, but that's not how it works in Generation 3. Using Agility when paralyzed is essentially useless, because your speed still just gets quartered. Swellow's TM and HM learn set is incredibly small. It just gets normal and flying type moves with the addition of Thief and Steel Wing. None of these are going to help it through Roxanne, so I'm going to have to brute force my way through her. In order to level, I fight pretty much every trainer, and with the medium slow growth rate, this brings Swellow up to level 17. This is pretty good. I could have gone over the next damage rounding threshold to level 18 to get a little bit more oomph, but I'm going to take a different approach instead. I have left this one trainer unbattled, because fighting her allows me to go up against a Shroomish, which has 3 moves: Absorb, Tackle, and Stun Spore. I'm simply going to spam Focus Energy or Growl over and over again until this grass type hits me with Stun Spore, paralyzing Swellow. This triggers Guts, boosting my attack stat by 50%. Now, I'm ready to take on Roxanne. First of all, at the beginning of this battle, you might be worried about the fact that I'm not going to outspeed her rocks even though I'm paralyzed. No, this is actually an advantage for me, and this is also a hidden advantage of speed lowering natures. Her Pokemon only choose the move Rock Tomb when they want to speed control you, but if you're slower than them, they're not going to use this rock type move until they see that it can knock out your Pokemon. For both of the Geodude, this isn't really a factor because they're going to be using Rock Throw instead. That said, if I can make it to the Nose Pass, it's just going to be going for Block, Harden, and Tackle. Turn 1, I made sure to set up Focus Energy because it's going to help me knocking out her Pokemon quickly. And this is really important because the Geodude, after it sets up Defense Curl, takes very little damage from my best move, which is Wing Attack. Quick Attack is also decent. It does 2/3 of the damage of Wing Attack and might be an option if I need to move first against her Pokemon. However, Wing Attack is still better when I need raw damage. I'm able to make it by both of the Geodudes, largely because I get critical hits exactly when I need them. Then, on the Nose Pass, I go for Growl initially to lower its attack. I want to make sure when it attacks with Tackle, it's not doing very much damage so that it never sees the KO with Rock Tomb. Swellow's going to have to last here for quite some time because while she did use one potion on the first Geodude, I got around the potion on the second Geodude with a critical hit on turn 2, which actually works against Swellow because now she can use the potion on Nose Pass, which is going to be using a decent amount of Hardens, improving its defense over and over again. Also, as her ace, it's holding an Oran Berry, so it's going to heal a little bit more. By the way, the modifiers aren't showing up on the enemy side of the overlay. I'm not sure why. This has been a bug for a long time that I just haven't been able to solve. The nose pass is at -2 attack, and this means its tackles aren't doing that much, but it's still using them frequently, bringing me down to low health. If Swellow doesn't move because of paralysis, it's going to lose here because I'm pretty sure the nose pass is going to choose Rock Tomb now. However, I don't miss, wing attack hits, and nose pass goes down. The first badge gives me a 10% boost to my attack stat, and that's really going to help out Swellow throughout the next section of the game. Although I am going to heal the paralysis now because I don't think running guts for random trainers makes much sense. In these emerald challenges, I'm now allowing myself to catch Abra, so I pick one of those up, and then I battle the rival in Rustboro City. This is just for a little bit of extra experience, although I don't really think Swellow needs it, since coming up on Dewford Island I have to face Brawley, and he's going to be incredibly easy. That said, the training inside the gym is also really quick, so I decide to fight a couple extra trainers just to improve Swellow's level up to 20 over a damage rounding threshold before the next gym leader. Brawley leads with Machop, one shot with wing attack, it never even gets to go for bulk up. Metatite can't hit me because it only has focus punch, leaving only Makuhita. I use wing attack and one shot. Swellow is now on a roll. Well, at least until it gets to Wattson, who's coming up next. I'm gonna have to find a way to solve his Magneton. You'll notice that I've gone for Hidden Power Ground, and on Slateport Beach I can pick up the soft sand right away. However, the TM shop in Slateport City does not appear until you get the Secret Power TM north of Mauville City, which requires you to use Rock Smash outside of battle, and to do that you have to have defeated Wattson, so Hidden Power Ground isn't available prior to the Magneton. And Mud Slap is a tutor move that you can only learn in the Battle Frontier, so I have to beat the Magneton without these two super effective moves. Swellow doesn't learn any damage dealing fire type moves. Sunny Day gave me false hope when I first glanced at the moveset. Also, while Counter is a fighting type move, it's also not available yet, and it's just not that good in general. With no other options, it looks like Swellow's gonna have to solve Wattson in the exact same way that it solved Roxanne, using Guts with a status condition. The rival south of Mauville City is really easy for Swellow to take on. He has Combuskin in this case. I figured that the fighting type made the most sense to go up against a normal type flying Pokemon, although all of his team members would be quite weak to Swellow. It takes no damage from ground type moves, it's super effective against Grovyle as well as the Combuskin, so in the end I just can't make this battle difficult. Swellow unfortunately cannot learn Rock Smash, so this HM is not going to be a useful solution for the Magneton. After that, I do a bunch of training in the surrounding area, leveling up as much as I can before taking on Wattson. This brings Swellow up to level 33. I'm hoping that this is going to be enough. Voltorb is up first, and it gives us a good look at type effectiveness against electric types. Wing Attack is resisted, so it only has an effective power of 45, whereas Quick Attack, which is neutral, has an effective power of 66 because I'm holding the Silk Scarf, and I get the same type attack bonus. Using the normal type move, I can one-shot the Voltorb, which is really encouraging. Next is Electrike. It likes to waste time with Leer or Howl, plus Shockwave from this weak Pokemon shouldn't do that much, but I was pretty sure it was going to set up. So I go for Focus Energy first, it sets up Howl, and then I knock it out with Quick Attack. Okay, this is where things get more difficult. I was anticipating Magneton coming in next, but it doesn't. Instead, Manectric comes out, and I think this is a big advantage for Swellow. Wattson's Ace is going to be trying to use Thunder Wave to cut Swellow's speed, but this will also trigger Guts, improving my attack stat. And I have Quick Attack, so I'm still going to be moving first. I also score a critical hit, and it does enough damage. Okay, so Magneton's next, and here Wing Attack does less damage because Magneton doubly resists it, whereas Quick Attack only is resisted by the Steel type, so it still has better damage here. And once again, that's perfect, so I can continue to move first against the Magneton. This fight is really coming together. Quick Attack is doing roughly 1/3 to Magneton. Actually, it's doing what looks like the perfect amount of damage to avoid Wattson using Super Potions on the Steel type. So in only 3 turns, I knock out his final Pokemon, and in my first attempt, I defeat what is usually the most difficult gym leader in the entire game. So Guts is really putting in some work for us in this run. Still though, I'm going to heal right now and get rid of it for random battles, because Swellow will be strong enough for all of these trainers. North of Mauville City, I pick up the Secret Power TM. Whenever I want, I'll be able to head back to Slateport City and pick up the Hidden Power TM. Let me quickly explain how I do this, because now that I'm catching Abra in these playthroughs, there is a way to make it slightly more efficient. If I loop all the way through Meteor Falls, I can go through Rust Turf Tunnel and pick up the Strength TM. Then I can teleport back to Mauville City, which was my last heal point. This allows me to journey south to Slateport City, grabbing Hidden Power very quickly, and then I can teleport back to Mauville City. After this, I simply simply go north, up the mountain, and then face Maxi. Right now my moveset is Quick Attack, Wing Attack, Hidden Power, and Focus Energy. I've kept Focus Energy, and I do have a status condition for this battle because I wanted to improve my attack stat as much as possible. Still though, with Intimidate, I'm not doing enough to one-shot the Mighty Yenna, which is quite annoying, and Paralysis ends up being frustrating here, and Swellow only has 32 hit points left over by the time Zubat comes in. I'm paralyzed against it, it does damage, taking me down to 20 hit points, but maybe Hidden Power Ground with super effective damage is going to do enough to the Camerupt. I go for it, the Fire type sets up with Focus Energy, that's perfect, Hidden Power hits, and Maxi's Ace faints. Okay, perfect. With Hidden Power Ground, I should be set up for success against Flannery, who is next. She leads with Nummel, and I forgot to heal. This is obviously going to be a loss. I did try to play it out using Quick Attack, one-shotting her first 2 Pokemon, but then Camerupt comes in and it finishes me with an Overheat. I healed for the next fight, getting rid of Paralysis so that I don't have the Guts boost. I was just hoping that Hidden Power Ground would have enough damage to one-shot everything, but the Camerupt is surviving with a small amount of HP. Luckily for Swellow, it misses its Overheat, and I'm able to take it out for free, burning her Hyper Potions in the process. So the Torkoal is going to be much easier now. I use Hidden Power Ground, it does roughly half. Is that half? I'm not sure. Then Torkoal uses Overheat, and we're not going to find out, because this Overheat does massive damage with a critical hit and one-shots Swellow. Okay, so with Guts, let's boost my attack and see if this is possible. I get lucky against the Camerupt because instead of prioritizing Overheat, it's not seeing the damage to KO, so it goes for Tackle instead, doing pitiful damage. But then Torkoal comes out, I'm paralyzed, can't move, it uses Overheat, and without a critical hit, Swellow faints. I tried again without Paralysis so that I can move first against all of her Pokemon without having to rely on Quick Attack. Hidden Power Ground does one-shot the Camerupt this time because I get a critical hit, so Swellow's lucky here. Then Torkoal comes out. I go for Hidden Power Ground. It does decent damage. However, Torkoal misses Overheat, and then we get to see the second damage range with the Ground type move, and it is not enough to finish off her ace. Plus, when I use Quick Attack, which is a high priority move, it is still not faster than trainers using items, so she's able to heal with a Hyper Potion before I get to attack again. Quick Attack does okay damage. Luckily, Torkoal goes for Body Slam, and I'm able to knock it out with 2 more Hidden Power Grounds. So this fight was a lot bumpier than I was expecting it to be, especially when I'm running Hidden Power Ground, which was supposed to help me solve Flannery. Although this move is still going to have utility in the late game against Steven Stone. It is one of my only options against Steel types. Because I have Abra, I'm going to spend some time backtracking to Fall Arbor Town now to pick up the TM for Return, which is going to be Swellow's most powerful move throughout the majority of this run. To save time, I can use Abra to teleport back to Mauville City, which is my waypoint throughout this entire section of the game. It helps me get to Norman more quickly, saving a little bit of walk time, but it's also going to help me get from Norman back to Fort Tree City to continue with the playthrough. Well, it would have if I didn't play like a complete scrub entering the Petalburg City Pokemon Center when I really didn't need a heal. I've definitely got some Abra muscle memory to build. To make Norman as easy as possible, I think it's time to give up Quick Attack, so I'm going to put Return in its place, which greatly improves Swellow's damage output. This alone should be enough. Spin does first and Return one-shots. It's not quite as good against the Vigoroth, which does survive, but Norman uses one of his Hyper Potions here, which will be an advantage against his Slaking later. The experience from Vigoroth levels Swellow up to 38, where it can learn Aerial Ace. I teach this in the place of Wing Attack because I need to hold on to Focus Energy. This way, I can use the move that deals no damage against the Slaking so that it can't counter my first attack. This way, I can then use Return when it's loafing around. Focus Energy again when it's going to attack. This time it goes for Facade. We're going to talk about this move. It could be useful for Swellow. However, it doesn't do enough damage to knock me out, and I can use 2 follow-up returns, finishing the Slaking. This only worked because of a Citrus Berry, which healed it enough to take it out of Hyper Potion range because Norman did have 1 more. This ended up being another close win. With the exception of Brawly, all of the gym battles have been kind of nail-biters. And the same thing might play out against Winona. She does have a Skarmory, and I have no answer for that Pokemon. And that's going to be true throughout this entire run. There is just no move that Swellow learns that can hit it for neutral damage, which is so frustrating. That said, Norman does give me the TM for Facade. This move has a lot of synergy when used by Swellow. First of all, it gets the same type attack bonus, making its effective power 105. Return, on the other hand, will have an effective power of 153 after the same type attack bonus, so it is still superior. However, Facade's power is doubled when the user is affected by a non-volatile status condition. This brings it up to 140 before the same type attack bonus, and 200 110 after. Plus, if we are affected by a non-volatile status condition, we're going to get the Guts boost, making Facade vastly superior to Return for raw damage. Still though, I would have to run a status condition. Without Quick Attack, getting paralyzed doesn't make quite as much sense, but maybe Burn or Poison would. Just so you know, Guts prevents the damage drop that physical moves have when your Pokemon's affected by Burn, so that's not a factor that I need to worry about. Speaking of Burn though, there aren't a lot of ways to get this status condition reliably in a playthrough of Pokemon Emerald. For example, this Combuskin doesn't even have any fire type moves, and its ability is Blaze, so I can't attack into it and hope to get burned by something like Flame Body. I'm going to pass through Fort Tree City here, healing in the center to set my waypoint there. This is so I can journey all the way to Lily Cove City next and fight the rival outside of the department store. By the way, this Combuskin also does not have any fire type moves, and its moveset is really bad. This kind of looks like a set out of Generation 1. Peck, Sand Attack, Bulk Up, and Quick Attack, and it's level 34. I came to the department store as early as possible for a couple of reasons. First of all, I want to sell a bunch of items and purchase myself as many protein as I can use right now. That number is 5. This allows me to max out my attack EVs at 100. I invest the remaining vitamins in defense EVs. Maybe I could have skipped these and tried to earn slightly more attack EVs throughout the playthrough, but I think defense will also help against Steven Stone, who is primarily going to be relying on physical attacks. The second reason I've come to the department store is to get the best move in Generation 3, Substitute, which I teach in the place of Focus Energy because it doesn't have any more utility. I need Winona's badge to use Fly outside of battle, and this is why Teleport is perfect for this section of the game. I can quickly head back to Fort Tree City and take her on. Turn 1, Substitute. Block everything the Swablu is going to do to me, then go for Return, one-shotting. Aerial Ace is super effective against the Tropius. It goes down in one hit. Pelipper, of course, uses Protect, wasting my time before I one-shot with Return. Skarmory comes in, but I still have my Substitute in place, so I'm not vulnerable to Sand Attack. And Return is doing roughly 1/3 at level 42. This is perfect for me because she's not going to use a healing item on the Skarmory, allowing me to knock it out in only 3 turns. And my Substitute blocked all of its attacks, although I don't have my defense for the Altaria, which is last. Hold on to the idea of the damage ranges against the Skarmory. I'm going to return to that in 1 second. After the Altaria survives on a sliver of health, it uses its Oranberry. This doesn't prevent the Hyper Potion, but then I can just continuously use Return and she's not going to attack. Eventually Swellow rolls better damage and the Altaria faints. So Winona is defeated. Overall, a very simple battle. Now I want to talk about these damage ranges. The unique combination of the medium slow growth rate and Swellow's attack stat has allowed it to squeeze through a lot of gym leaders without them healing their Pokemon. Wattson's Magneton, Norman's Slaking, and now Winona's Skarmory. Also, the damage ranges against Roxanne were pretty good. I could have burned both of her potions before the Nose Pass if I had just not got a critical hit on the second Geodude. When optimizing for the second playthrough, I need to be careful for Swellow not to over level and then start putting all of these Pokemon into Super Potion or Hyper Potion range, because if the enemy leader heals, a Pokemon which was a 3 hit is going to turn into like a 5 to 7 hit. And since a lot of these fights have been really close, that might lead to a lot more resets. I'm drawing attention to this because I find it strange and counterintuitive. Raising Swellow's level throughout this section of the game might actually make the run more difficult. And of course, lowering the level might have the same impact because if I'm not 3-shotting, I'm going to 4-hit, and that'll put them at a sliver of health, likely triggering the potion. I'm definitely going to have to keep this in mind for my next playthrough. At the top of Mount Pyre, I have a sketchy double battle against the Grunts. This battle has actually become more difficult in recent times. Sometimes it's because Poochyena goes for Swagger, but other times it's because the Wailmer is using Rollout, which is the case here. I think the solution here isn't Substitute, it's obviously the Person Berry. If I can just counter out Swagger once, then I'll sweep through their teams. I can also target the Wailmer second so that I knock out the Poochyena first, eliminating the possibility of Roar, which allows me to take care of the Wailmer next before Rollout gets too stacked up. Swellow has a really easy time against Maxie. It can just set up Substitute on turn 1, and even with Intimidate, I'm still able to 2-shot all of his remaining Pokemon. Maxie's in the Aqua Hideout. Now, let's head to Pacific Log Town. West of this location, there is one trainer who has 5 Gyarados. This guy is awful to fight if you're a physical attacker and you don't have Substitute. Then each Gyarados progressively lowers your attack one more stage with Intimidate. But if you do have Substitute, you could just set it up on the Magikarp at the beginning of the fight and then sweep his team. The reason I'm fighting him is because Gyarados give attack EVs, which is going to improve my most important stat. I want it to be as high as possible by the end of the game for Steven Stone. Also, as soon as I beat him, I fly back to Pacifidlog Town, and then I surf back down the rapids to get the rare candy. I do want you to know that this is a time waste. There is a more efficient way to do this. I'll show you that in the second run. Okay, so Tate and Liza are coming up. This is one of the most difficult battles in a solo run because you have to fight 2 Pokemon at once. Typically, before this in Pokemon Emerald, I like to use my rare candies, and I am going to do that today, going from level 49 up to 60. Also, prior to the fight, Hidden Power is not going to be useful at all because all their Pokemon are either flying types or they have Levitate. So I'll teach Steel Wing in the place of the ground type move so that I have super effective damage against their rock types. With the Silk Scarf, I'm easily able to one-shot the Claydol, at least I think I would have. I got a critical hit here, so it goes down turn 1. I think it was going to go for Ancient Power since I'm a flying type, so that's why I wanted to target it down first. Lunatone comes in next. Steel Wing is able to get a one-shot, leaving only the Xatu and the Soul Rock. Xatu is just setting up with Calm Mind. I target it with Return, taking it out so it doesn't attack with Psychic, because Soul Rock's likely to set up, and it does with Sunny Day. I can then strike back with Steel Wing, and this does enough damage, making Tate and Liza a very easy sweep. The Space Center battle is boring as usual, and so is the fight against Archie. Also, Juan is next, and he's not going to be a problem. Let's quickly talk about Facade here. I have not chosen to use it up until this point in the game because I didn't want to waste time going back and getting status conditions before every major battle. If I could just make it through those fights without the status condition, using Return, it's going to be far faster. The only time Facade is going to be more useful is when my damage ranges aren't good enough using Return. If I get stuck against a trainer, then potentially Facade is going to be the solution that I need. And I'm saying all this now because Juan is not going to be the trainer that I get stuck against. His team is incredibly easy for Swellow. I one-shot the Kingdra as well as the Whiscash, and those are the 2 Pokemon that typically survive attacks. Now for Wally, I do have to deal with another Magneton, but in this case, it's just kind of bad. It's a low level, and it is doing a lot of damage with Thunderbolt. It takes me to orange health, but after that, I can just one-shot the remainder of his team members. He could actually have been a threat if he had a stronger follow-up after the Magneton. Alright, let's get into the Elite Four. First of all, I'm not using Facade here. The reason is really simple. I don't have ambitions of beating the Elite Four right now. Instead, I want to fight them over and over again and level as much as is possible. I know that Swellow is not going to be able to defeat Steven Stone at level 68. It's probably going to need level 80 or maybe even level 90. I would be surprised if we have to be a higher level than that. After all, I have a secret plan for him that I think is going to make the battle a little bit easier than it otherwise should be. If I was using Facade and I had to constantly block out, then re-status myself and then fight the League again, things would be much slower here. Maybe I would beat the League on my first attempt because Swellow is pretty strong, but then I would just have to come back here anyways and grind against them, leveling up more. If I wanted to do repeat attempts, maybe I would teach Return in the place of Facade, but then I wouldn't have Facade available later on in case I find that it's useful against Steven Stone. I don't think that's going to be the case, but I want to play safely in this first run. Sydney's not an issue at all because I have Aerial Ace and Substitute. Phoebe, on the other hand, is quite difficult. I'm not doing enough damage to her Pokemon, and the Ace Dusclops is able to survive 2 hits, leaving Swellow on very low health by the next Bayonet. Again, I'm not trying to win here. I'll just take a blackout and fight Sydney and Phoebe again and again until I can beat her. This ended up taking a surprising number of blackouts, a total of 7, until I ended up beating Phoebe at level 70. You might be wondering here why I'm not using Fly for a little bit more damage against her Pokemon. Yes, that is an option, but if I teach Fly, I can't get rid of it during the remainder of the Elite Four. I also can't get Aerial Ace back, and it is helpful against Pokemon like Sydney's team, which like to use Double Team occasionally. They also like to use Sand Attack. I'm just holding on to Aerial Ace because it's roughly equivalent to Fly. It only has 10 less base power, plus it also has more PP, and it doesn't waste an additional turn every time you use it. Okay, Glacia, I have Steel Wing for this fight. Now, I should note here that this move, every time you use it, has a 10% chance of boosting your defense stat. That said, I'm not actually going to use Steel Wing here because even when it's super effective, Return just does more damage when I'm holding the Silk Scarf. I'm able to one-shot all of her Pokemon with the exception of the Walrein. It survives on red HP. It uses Ice Beam, which does massive damage, but not enough to knock out Swellow. Walrein eats its Citrus Berry, preventing Glacia from using a healing item, and I knock it out on the next turn. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to beat Drake on my first attempt, but I'm going to play this and just try at least. Substitute turn 1, then knock out the Shelgon. He sends in Salamence next, which I wasn't expecting. This is because it has the move Rock Slide, which can break my Substitute, but now I've avoided Intimidate, and I'm able to knock out his Ace fairly easily. From there, the Altaria, the Kingdra, and the Flygon are all one-shots. I want to emphasize here, I think Swellow is actually a really good Pokemon for an Emerald playthrough. Up until now, it hasn't really had problems outside of Flannery. Those were my 3 resets. All of the blackouts to this moment have been intentional for training. But what about Wallace? His Pokemon are water types, so they do have ice moves for coverage. Wailord is first, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be going for Blizzard. I don't want to set up Substitute, plus I want to attack so that its water spouts do less damage. I go for Return right away, and the Wailord just barely survives. This is another incredibly convenient damage range, because now I can set up Substitute knowing that Wallace is going to heal on the next turn. Also, then because I'm on lower health after my Substitute, he uses Double Edge instead of one of his more powerful moves. My Substitute survives and Wailord knocks itself out. This couldn't have gone any better for Swellow. This is like the perfect scenario. I have my defense in place for the remainder of his team members. I one-shot the Tentacruel because it has weak physical defense. My Milotic is next. It's also a one-shot with Return. Aerial Ace takes care of Ludicolo. Whiscash is next. This is a pretty defensive Pokemon and is also quite bulky, but Return gets the job done. I block the Intimidate from Gyarados with my Substitute. While I don't knock out in one turn, Wallace just uses a full restore, and then I roll better damage, knocking out his final Pokemon. Okay, Swellow, that was actually a really good performance. I didn't expect this. We're only level 73. I don't think that's going to be enough for Steven, but let's just go and see. Prior to this fight, I have 5 rare candies left over, so I'm going to use them now to go up to level 78, improving my damage ranges. I'm also going to reteach Hidden Power Ground in the place of Return, and then Attract in the place of Aerial Ace. Okay, turn 1, I get hit by Toxic. So I just finished playing Zangoose and Seviper, where this was not a problem. I forgot that I do have to set up Substitute turn 1 against the Skarmory if I want to block Toxic with a Pokemon that is not immune to poison. So I take 1 reset quickly. You might wonder why not use the poison with Guts, but it doesn't work that way because Toxic will stack up damage every turn. I'm just going to take way too much by the time I get to the end of the battle. 6 Pokemon is impossible if you're always taking Toxic damage and you have no way to heal, which my current moveset does not have. The leftovers gives me some passive healing, and I'm hopefully going to leverage that with Substitute and Attract to great effect. Also, here's my secret strategy for this fight. Steel Wing has a 10% chance to raise my defense, and it does pathetic damage against the Skarmory. If I just spam this move over and over again, which has decent PP, maybe I can boost my defense a lot so that the other Pokemon on Steven's team aren't doing very much with their super effective moves. I'm thinking specifically of the ancient power users Claydol, Cradily, and Armaldo. I'm fairly sure the Aggron is going to be going for Thunder, even though that move doesn't make a lot of sense as a part of its set, and I'm pretty sure that if I get defensive boosts, Metagross will choose Psychic. Here's the thing though. Steel Wing really sucks. This move is awful. It has 90% accuracy, and the 10% chance to raise defense is not something that is fun to rely on. I literally spam out every single use of Steel Wing. That is 25 times, and I only get 1 defense boost. This also got really close to the wire because I just barely had enough uses of the move to knock the Claydol out. And from here on out, I'm going to have to rely on Hidden Power Ground. If I hadn't knocked the Claydol out, I would have had to use Struggle, which would have made the remainder of the fight not possible, because Metagross with Psychic is going to do enough damage to at least 2 or 3 shot. Now Hidden Power Ground, it doesn't have enough PP. I run out on the Aggron, and as a result I get taken down by Dragon Claw. Okay, so PP problems it is. We can solve this by changing up my moveset. Fly, Hidden Power Ground, Steel Wing, and Substitute. I can still go for the defensive boosts against the Skarmory. Steel Wing is really good against the Cradily and the Armaldo as well later into the fight. Fly allows me to do neutral damage to a Pokemon like the Claydol, and it also allows me to stack up healing with the leftovers. Plus, it gives me more uses of a move that deals okay damage. In the end though, this just doesn't pan out. Once again, I get very few defensive boosts, only +1, and then the Skarmory knocks out Swellow because I run out of substitutes. I tried a different set using Rest in the place of Substitute, but this doesn't work out very well because the Skarmory can hit me with Toxic and I have to use a bunch of rests, plus I'm not getting the Steel Wing boosts that I need to make this healing move very effective. I should also note that fights like this take a really long time. I do manage to make it by the Claydol back to the Cradily, but then it finishes me because my defense at only +2 is just not enough, and Ancient Power gets a critical hit. Luckily for me, I have been saving before teaching all of these moves, so I can just go back to the Elite Four and fight them with Return, Aerial Ace, Steel Wing, and Substitute. This makes it trivial to get through all of these 5 trainers. I also saved before using my rare candies, so I can go from level 73 up to 75 fighting the Elite Four once. I also battle Wally in Victory Road twice, bringing me up to 76, and then I do do one more pass through the league, getting to level 79. I fight some wild Pokemon, go to level 80, and then I use 5 rare candies, going to 85 before trying Steven Stone again. I have done something radical here, which is using a PP max on Steel Wing to get 40 PP of this move. I am hoping that over the 40 uses of it, I will be able to get 4 defense boosts. And well, I'm doing more damage now, so I'm actually not getting as many turns against the Skarmory to use the Steel type move. But I do get 2 boosts. However, this isn't enough to survive Ancient Powers with my substitute on the Armaldo. It's still just breaking my defense. By the time I make it to the Aggron, I'm in a not great position where I have to just go for either substitute and hope that I'll survive or it'll miss with Thunder. It doesn't, breaking my defense. And then I go for Hidden Power, which is not enough to one-shot. I can use Fly to buy some time, heal a little bit with leftovers, and then knock out the Aggron. This does work out, but then Metagross comes in, and unless I crit, I don't think I'm going to win. And at level 85, it doesn't even look like Hidden Power Ground is going to two-shot. I take 2 fast losses, then I get set up with Steel Wing, this time to +3 before the Metagross, but again, it's just going for Psychic. I have a substitute in place though, and a decent amount of health. Maybe this will give me the win. Hidden Power does just less than half. I go for it again, which I was hoping would take it to Citrus Berry range and then heal it so that he wouldn't use a full restore. Unfortunately though, the damage is just a little bit too much, and after the Citrus Berry, I am no longer having the luck I was having earlier into the run. So Metagross gets healed by a full restore, attacks, and Swellow goes down. Now, I wanted this strategy to work. I really did. I tried over and over again with Steel Wing, and I'm just not getting the setup I need, and I lose so many times. Until something happened that wasn't happening up until this point in the fight. I'm using Fly on the Skarmory to try and heal with leftovers as much as possible, and then he switches in his Aggron next, and I critical hit. If I can't win in this scenario, I don't know if I'm going to be able to win. I'm able to stall out the Claydol until it's not using Ancient Powers anymore, and then I can stall with Fly and Substitute to get back all of my health before the Cradily comes in. Steel Wing does a lot of damage here, and I'm able to two-shot, which is really great. Also, I have the damage range to two-shot the Armaldo. Plus, Fly is decent against it because it's part bug type, so I can use that move to knock it out and gain back a little bit more health with leftovers. Now the question is, does he send in Metagross next or Skarmory? And he sends back out the Skarmory, giving me time to both heal with leftovers using Fly and Steel Wing, and I also get incredibly lucky, setting up 4 times with Steel Wing against this Steel type. Something like this just hadn't happened until this point in the battle, and it's really nice that it's happening right before the Metagross. It's definitely not going to do much damage with Meteor Mash now. However, by the time the Skarmory goes down, I have depleted all of my uses of Substitute and I'm on orange health. So unless I two-shot with Hidden Power and survive a Psychic, this isn't gonna work. Or I could potentially critical hit in one shot, and I do get a critical hit, but it's not enough to one shot because my damage range just isn't good enough at level 85. I fight the Elite Four 2 more times, leveling to 89. Well, almost 89. I then grind on wild Pokemon up to level 90 over the next damage rounding threshold before I head back to Steven Stone. When I look at my moveset, I don't really know what I can do better. I could potentially use Return in the place of Fly, or Facade with a status condition, but I think the only status condition that really makes sense here would be Paralysis, and losing 1/4 of my attacks seems like it's going to be way worse than the current strategy. I think what this is going to come down to is just good luck. Steel Wing defensive setups are helpful, but they aren't required. At this point in my run, I had started cluing into the fact that it's not actually a good idea to use Steel Wing against the Skarmory. Instead, I want to be using Fly and minimizing the number of turns I need to set up with Substitute. I want to gain back maximum health with leftovers and knock out Steven's first Pokemon as quickly as I can. Or I want him to burn full restores here, healing it, so that then he won't use them later into the fight. I can stall out the Claydol's Ancient Power using Substitute and Fly, and then make it by it with full health or close to full health, at least with my Substitute intact. Then for the Cradily, I need to play risky and have my Substitute for the Armaldo. This is a non-negotiable, because getting hit by Ancient Power is just not acceptable. Luckily, the Cradily can go for Ingrain or Confuse Ray, so I do have opportunity here. I make it by to the Armaldo, and now things get a bit sketchy. I'm going to be using Fly right away to knock it out as soon as is possible. Being without a substitute for the Aggron seems like it's a really bad position, but it actually isn't. After going for one Thunder, which does decent damage, I'm able to use Hidden Power to bring the Aggron down to full restore range. And Steven Stone is going to consistently heal the Aggron with multiple full restores, whereas he only ever used one full restore against the Skarmory. He has a total of 4, and I'm able to burn out all of his remaining healing items before the Metagross comes in. Okay, level 90, you better have the damage range required, and the answer is Yes, it does. I'm doing half. At least what looks like half. The Metagross does not eat its citrus berry, so that wasn't actually half. Then it goes for Meteor Mash because I have not set up with Steel Wing. This does a good amount of damage. I go for Hidden Power again, and yeah, I just roll better damage, I guess, because I knock out the Metagross, avoiding the citrus berry entirely. With that luck, Swellow clocks in with its first playthrough result of 2 hours, 48 minutes, and 10 seconds, with 21 resets and 8 blackouts. That's 29 faults. It finished the game at level 90 with a game time of 7 hours and 48 minutes. Okay, to optimize this one, I looped in Ike the Killer to help me out. I was a little bit lost as to what to do against Steven Stone, but after talking with Ike about this, I realized a couple things. Return isn't actually that much weaker when compared with Hidden Power Ground, and in some cases it actually does more damage than Hidden Power Ground, and Steel Wing, while it's pretty good against Cradily, it's honestly not the best move for the fight. Waiting for defense boosts just wastes time, and it's one of the reasons I had such a bad time against Steven Stone the first time around. Plus, if I'm using Return, then I'm going to be able to two-shot the Claydol and avoid Ancient Power more effectively. I was also able to clean up a bunch of other spots during the run. For example, Roxanne at level 17 is actually a lot more risky than just fighting her at level 18. The damage rounding threshold this early on is the difference between a 3-hit with no defense curls on the Geodude and a 4-hit. This is prior to the Guts boost. But if I have the Guts boost with Wing Attack, I should be two-shotting the Geodude, whereas at level 17, once again it takes one more turn, being a consistent 3-shot. I think it makes sense to do this little bit of extra grinding with Swellow to get to 18, because Roxanne can be awful. Now, I did one other playthrough in the early game which died at Wattson. I'll talk about why in a second. That one I had no resets to Roxanne, but then when I came back to fix my strategy for Wattson, Roxanne beat me a total of 5 times in this playthrough. This fight just ends up being RNG, especially because you're paralyzed. If the status condition activates too many times, especially on the early Geodude, which are going for Rock Throw, then Swellow is not going to be successful. It's always a little bit painful for me when on game day I don't get the luck I need, but I'm going to proceed with this run because I still think that I'm going to make a much better finish because my overall rooting is going to be so much stronger against Steven Stone. Now, the one thing I wanted to clean up against Wattson is my damage range. I was level 32 previously, and this is slightly too low. I want to be over the damage rounding threshold at level 33. This gives me a nearly guaranteed two-shot on the Manectric, at least from a damage range perspective, 49 to 58% per hit with Quick Attack. But I'm going to get the Guts boost because it is going to use Thunder Wave on me unless I've already got the Guts boost from Static on the Electrike. This will add more damage and hopefully give me enough to knock it out even when it has a Citrus Berry. In this case I don't, it does survive and he heals it, which is so annoying. That said, in the previous run, I just kept bringing it down to low health, and then eventually it got me with Shockwave, which was really bad. I have one loss in this playthrough against Wattson, but then I defeat him. Okay, there's a really easy way to make Flannery simple. That is be level 36 or higher, then equip the Soft Sand and use Hidden Power Ground. 1-shots on Numel, Slugma, and Camerupt, and a 2-shot on the Torkoal. Its Overheat only does between 58 and 68% damage. There's no reason to have a status condition here, it just makes the fight more unreliable. As long as I make good choices against Norman, being level 38, which is slightly higher than before, does impact damage ranges here positively. And in this case, I am one level higher than that at 39, so this is going to be an easy fight overall. For example, Return does between 99 and 116% damage against the Vigoroth. That's a 94% chance to one-hit. I still have to 3-shot the Slaking, but with everything else being a one-hit, I have more health for this portion of the fight, and that seems to make it more likely to go for counter to inflict massive damage, especially when I'm goading it on every turn. It's loafing, attacking with Return, a physical move. Okay, now we're getting into the mid-game, and we need to talk about the strategy I have for Steven Stone. I am going to be maxing my attack EVs. Normally, with bad Pokemon I do this, like Shedinja for example, but I haven't really done it with fully evolved Pokemon in the past because it always felt faster just to level up during the league and then grind to like 95 or something and beat Steven. But in this case, if I target trainers that give good attack EVs, and I give Swellow the Macho Brace, then it's going to gain EVs very quickly. This will impact my damage range at Steven Stone and prevent me from having to do a bunch of late game leveling. And that's really good because the medium slow growth rate takes a lot of experience once it reaches the high levels. For example, over here by the Berry Master's house, I can fight this guy who has Pinsir. It gives 2 EVs, and if I have the Macho Brace, which I have forgotten to equip by this point, it's going to give me double that yield. This trainer is a bit out of the way, but not for this playthrough, because I'm going to go to the Berry Master's garden and raid all of these plants for their berries, which are EV dropping berries. I can use them to get rid of HP, defense, and special defense. I will find berries that drop special attack later into the run once I get Waterfall, but there are no berries available to drop speed EVs. EVs. Small insert here to just provide some additional context. You can get tomato berries in this game, but they all require RNG. There are none available that I can pick up consistently, which is probably the most annoying thing about Swellow's second run, because as I fight a bunch of trainers that have Zubat, like these random grunts, I'm gaining speed EVs, and I want to have the Macho Brace for these battles so that I can gain more attack EVs, but then I invest more heavily into speed, which is the absolute worst stat right now. I'll have to drop useful stats like HP and physical defense in order to max out my physical attack, because I've accumulated all of these useless speed EVs. As we saw before, Tate and Liza were really simple at level 60, and that is my target level again. But before that, I'm going to go to Pacific Log Town. This is one of the moments where the Macho Brace really helps out, because I can fight the guy with 5 Gyarados using Substitute and the Brace, and this battle alone gives Swellow 20 points to its attack EV. Also, convenient trick here from Ike the Killer. If you walk north on this land area, you can then surf into the rapids and arrive at the rare candy without having to fly back to Pacific Log Town. Prior to Tate and Liza, I did a little bit extra training, saving some rare candies because I know you need a really high level by the end of the game. I only use 8 in total this time, still fighting them at level 60. All of their Pokemon are one-shots. This is an easy battle. Now, skipping over Juan, we're going to go into the Elite Four and talk about this area. Look at Sydney's team and the EVs they give. This battle is so amazing for attack. I kind of stumbled into this just by a happy accident in the first playthrough because I couldn't beat Phoebe, but what I was actually doing was grinding my attack stat higher, and by the end of the playthrough I had a total of 177 EVs invested in attack. Now that I'm using the berries to get rid of other EVs that I don't want, I can go into this Sydney fight over and over again, repeating this strategy, and gain so many attack EVs every time. 4 from Mightyena, 6 from Shiftry, 2 from Cacturn, 4 from Crawdaunt, and 4 from Absol. This battle also, like the guy with Gyarados, gives a total of 20 EV points to attack every time you complete it with the Macho Brace. I max out my attack EVs long before I max out my level. I need to get this all the way to 81 before I'm ready to fight Steven Stone, so I take a lot of time to train. There's some blackouts during the league when I can't beat them, but once my attack EVs are maxed, I teach Fly in the place of Aerial Ace so that I can defeat Phoebe and then gain the experience from Glacia, Drake, and sometimes Wallace along the way. Once I beat him for the first time that I'm done blacking out, I just grind on the league over and over again until I get to level 81. This is the threshold I was shooting for because with 7 remaining rare candies, I can bring my Swellow up to level 88. Okay, let's go into the battle against Steven Stone. This is the set I'm running: Return, Hidden Power Ground, Substitute, and Attract, with the leftovers as a held item. I could have potentially run the Soft Sand to give me better Hidden Power Ground damage ranges, but this is good enough. At level 88 with my attack EVs maxed out, Hidden Power should two-shot the Metagross, although that's not always going to happen because it does have a Citrus Berry. But I'm hoping that I get the lower damage roll on turn 1, it doesn't eat its Citrus Berry, and then I knock it out with the second turn. Also, I should note here that Return is so much better against the Skarmory for another reason, because whenever you attack this Steel type with a normal type move, Steven likes to then switch out into other Pokemon. Aggron sometimes, and also Cradily. This is better for me because then the Skarmory is going to come out prior to the Metagross, giving me more of a chance to heal using Attract and Substitute with the leftovers. And that brings me to the second damage range that's incredibly important for this fight. The Skarmory is not going to one-shot my substitutes using Steel Wing. If I come into this battle at a lower level, it will one-shot my substitutes at least some of the time, and that makes the whole fight so much less sustainable because I have to reset substitutes so I'm not hit by Toxic. Knowing that my subs hold for multiple turns gives me more time to heal back health with leftovers and more time to spam Return and knock out his Skarmory or force him to switch into a different Pokemon. In this case, he pulls back his Skarmory and sends out Cradily instead. Now, the lack of Steel Wing here is frustrating. It'll take a lot longer to knock out the Cradily, but that's actually an advantage for me. If I'm taking my time with Return or Hidden Power Ground, then Steven is more likely to use full restores prior to the Metagross coming in, which would give me either a 3-hit or a 2-hit against it. If my damage ranges go badly against it and I bring it to low health and he still has a full restore, then it's less likely for me to knock out the Metagross. So I want to have bad damage ranges earlier into the fight and then good damage ranges later into the fight. Hidden Power and Return have this weird synergy for Swellow to make that happen. I think the scariest Pokemon on his entire team after the Metagross is the Armaldo. It can do a lot of damage, and here I really am relying on Attract. It needs to make it miss, and I need a substitute for the Aggron, which is going to follow. Once again, for this Pokemon, I want my substitute to hold, but even if it doesn't, I still have a chance because Skarmory comes in next. I take my time, re-establish Attract, reset up Substitute, and then knock it out with Return. My health is high, and my substitute is in place for Metagross. This is the first time I battled Steven Stone in my second playthrough. So far, it's going really well. Turn 1, I do more than half to his ace. Frustrating, he heals with a Citrus Citrus Berry, so I'm not going to knock it out on the next turn, but I was able to stall him out long enough to burn all of his full restores on previous Pokemon. So even if I don't knock him out now, and I don't, I survive the next hit from Metagross because my health was high, and then I'm able to hit with one more Hidden Power Ground, closing things out for Swellow. In my second playthrough with it, I was able to get a time of 1 hour 43 minutes and 51 seconds, with 6 resets, 5 blackouts, all of which were intentional. I finished the game at level 88 with a game time of 6 hours and 31 minutes. Alright, let's go over to the tier list. One quick note here, I have promoted Shedinja from the Impossible tier to the Bruno tier because of Ike the Killer's strategy that works with it to make it win. I'll talk about this later. For now, let's move on to where Swellow was placed. This was not a great first run. Even with my modern skill, it didn't perform very well. It earned itself a placement behind Mawile and Sceptile in the E tier ahead of Ludicolo. All 3 of those other playthroughs I completed a very long time ago, as well as Shiftry, Tropius, and Sableye that are in the tier below it. Times north of 2 hours and 30 minutes are really bad for a fully evolved Pokemon, so Swellow deserves a bad finish here. You would think that it would perform much better in the follow-up tier list, but it really didn't. It actually gets a demotion here because while its time was significantly better than the first run, being over an hour faster, it is still not particularly competitive with all of the other Pokemon that I've run. It gets a placement this time behind Ludicolo in the F tier, just ahead of Wailord, Claydol, and Roselia. I'm pretty happy with this follow-up playthrough, and I think it's opened the door to a lot of EV optimizations in Pokemon Emerald. That said, I don't think training against wild Pokemon for EVs is the best option if you can do something like this where you're always fighting trainer Pokemon. Grinding on wild Pokemon just doesn't give as much experience, and you're wasting time when you could potentially be making progress with the game, just fighting random NPCs along the way that have, say, Mightyena giving you more attack. I'm looking forward to exploring EVs more in this game, and to do that, I'm just going to have to continue with my runs. Next, I'm planning to do Huntail and Goribus? Goribus? I don't know. People are going to really get on me for pronouncing that one wrong in the next video, so please let me know how I should pronounce it in this video so that I don't make that mistake then. If you support me on Patreon or through YouTube memberships, thank you so much. It means the world to me. Now, if you've made it this far, you're incredible. I'll see you in my next video.